It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
Here's an interesting question from Paul, Brian, and it's so good because Katie just got married. How do you change your plan when you combine finances with a new wife? Do you just add everything and change the percent contribution for the new income, or do you evaluate it separately? I guess my question more generally are, what steps do you take to combine finances for retirement planning after getting married? How do you think about, when you kind of come together as a household, approaching the financial puzzle of putting that together?
So Katie comes from her honeymoon, got a little bit of sunburn on her face. So it made me happy because, I mean, she had a good time out in the sun. She says, by the way, it wasn't actually from being on the beach. That was on the ferry ride that she forgot to put sunscreen on. But it cracked me up when she was giving us all the stories of how awesome her honeymoon was. And she says, hey, we were out on the beach, and I heard the couple behind us. They were talking about Roth IRAs. I couldn't help but notice it. I love it. And this conversation went on for like 30, 40 minutes. And she's like, should I tell them that we work with the Money Guy Show? So she got the perfect moment. And she did get to say, hey, I hear you guys talking about the Roth IRA. And come to find out, they are fans of the Money Guy Show. So maybe this very well, Paul could have been one of the couples on the beach
on the honeymoon
talking about this, because Money Guy family is everywhere. And you are our type of folks. You are definitely on the road, if you're not already there, of being a financial mutant. When you're on your honeymoon and you're like, Roth IRA, all right, let's do this. So so here's the thing. I think when you're thinking of marriage, it is one of those things. It's a big life change. I mean, I think my wife and I had not lived together when we got married. So the first 2 years were probably the two hardest years of our marriage.
It's interesting.
You're trying to figure out how you live together. So then you throw finances on this, and you've got a good recipe to turn something that seems on paper awesome into a lot of chaos. Because there's all kind of therapists will tell you that financial matters can be one of the biggest stress creators out there. So I think the best way to communicate and really make sure that this is transparent and everybody is to have great communication. Mm-hmm. Now, Bo, this is how long we've known each other. You've been married. How long y'all been married?
This could be 10 years this year.
So we're going on a decade. I remember when he was single Bo, engaged Bo, and then married Bo. And he thought on the plane ride on their honeymoon, they were going to be having this whole battle of telling her she can't do shampoo anymore.
What else does she want to talk about besides the budget on the honeymoon?
But it is one of those things. Go have a good communication, because it is interesting. A lot of the planning assumptions do get combined. You know, when we talk about 20 to 25% savings rate, a lot of you get twisted up by that. You're like, well, is that just me? Is that my spouse? It's household. You go add up all the income for the household, multiply that by 25%. Now you know how much you guys need to save. You can go see, is that coming all out of your pay or your spouse's pay? But you'd be better kind of equal that 25%, because it's now a household unit. We've tried to create content. I don't know how this is something you probably put some color to, Bo, but I like joint accounts, especially if you are a early simple marriage, meaning that you both are coming into the marriage young and without a lot of resources. We love doing the joint stuff where you're sharing everything, living together as one, even on the financial side. I do recognize, and I put the caveat, if it's a marriage that's like a second marriage, or there's some complications out there where you have family resources and other things, it's okay that things, because legal protections and other things, that there's some separation. But I still, even in those situations, I encourage there to still be some type of joint account where you're living and having this discussion as one, because what I don't want to have is that weird dynamic where one person is making more than the other and the other has this resentment, that even if you're having separate resources in certain parts of it because it's complicated, I still want you to have a pooled resource there so y'all can have good communication and look at it as a unit.
Communication is key. One of the mistakes I made early on is, I do this for a living, right? Like money and finance and personal finance is just sort of second nature to me. I live and I breathe it. Well, it wasn't until we've been married for a while, I recognized that some of the things that were just givens to me, like putting money in a Roth IRA or funding an HSA or fill in the blank, my wife had no idea what that was. And I had to realize, like, when we got married, like, my income was her income, and her income was my income, and our income was our income. And I was making a lot of decisions. And while they were good, I was kind of steamrolling her. So I just started talking about, hey, this is why we're doing this. Hey, let's sit down. What's our why? What are we working for? Where do we want to live? What kind of house we want to be in? What do we want to do with our family? Where do we want to travel? Okay, well, great. If we want to do those sorts of things, this is kind of the behavior. Once we started having those kind of conversations, it changed everything. And recognize the circumstances that are true when you are single may not be true when you're married. Real easy example is like Roth versus non-Roth. You may be a young single person and you're putting everything in Roth. Well, all of a sudden you get married and you combine incomes, like, oh, wow, we're high income folks now. Maybe we need to shift to pre-tax. So having an understanding around the hows and the whys and the whats and making it just an awesome, super steamy date night to talk about all the finances is a great idea so that you can get on the first page. And it is important to give both people room to talk. I had to teach them, and look, if my wife were here on the show, she would tell you how horribly I screwed this up. But you have to give the other spouse, your spouse, space to talk and say, hey, well, I think we should go do this. Okay, well, why do you think that? And let's talk about the implications of that rather than me just being like, oh, that's a horrible idea. Why would we ever, do that thing?
Well, I also think a good tool, and we're crazy if we don't bring this up because I think it's a great resource for people who are married. If you go to learn.moneyguy.com, we have a net worth tool.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
And I will tell you, because Bo mentioned that he's the one that's super interested in his finances. His spouse is not. I kind of in that same situation, but you can't even. Every relationship's a little different. It's not always the person that makes the money is the financial person in the relationship. You need to use a tool like the net worth tool where you can have, when you go on those date nights that both said are going to be steamy, have a net worth there that y'all can discuss and go over, make it a fun event, good communication, have the resource where you are at least annually tracking where you are from a financial standpoint so you can know that you are all on the same page and have good, productive conversations about it.